Hello and welcome to today's Partner Learning Media web conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, vendor collaboration. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Program Manager Mai Kirknel. So without any further delay, Mai, over to you.
Thank you. So welcome to this web conference. And we're going to speak about the vendor collaboration in Dynamics 365 financials and operations. And I can share with you here that we have opened up the Dynamics 365 for operation web interface. So external users as vendors can go in and have access to the data and collaborate with their customers here. So the interface is the same as the internal users. It's just controlled with security roles, so they don't see more than they have supposed to see. So we are sharing the current data, we're sharing the purchase orders with the vendors, and we let the vendor respond directly in the ERP system associated with the purchase order. So apart from that, we have also enabled this on a mobile app, which I will show in the end of the session here. And just to set the scene, why we're doing this, I mean, it's not a replacement of an EDI, because that will be certain customers vendor relationship where you have EDI. This is maybe for smaller vendors or relationship where you don't invest in EDI connections. So this is also a replacement for responding to mails and have the information unstructured of if the vendor can fulfill the demand in the purchase orders. So a way of have a single source of truth by sharing the same data in our system. So the most of the session here was going to happen in the products. So first, I want to show you a simple scenario where a vendor approved a purchase order and there's no changes. It's kind of a plain vanilla scenario, which it's normally in most cases are that the vendor accepts what you have requested for. And when we are finished with that, I'll take another scenario where vendors start suggesting changes to a purchase order and you are consuming some of those changes in the ERP system. So let's get started here. I have logged into my system. I don't know if you're familiar with the new Dynamics 365 for financial operations, but here is the cloud web-based interface. And I am, just to kind of explain what's going on here, I have two browsers. One is where I've logged in as this external user, the vendor. And to make it more simple, I've put some purple colors on that interface, purple-red colors. And then I have another interface where the purchasing agent is logged in, where I have blue colors here. You can see the blue colors here. The theme is in blue. So let's see, what can the vendor see when he logs in? It's, as I said before, it's basically the same interface. But just trimmed down, and so a few capabilities are available here. I have a purchase order confirmation workspace. We have a new concept of workspaces where your list and tasks can be gathered together depending on what the work task that you're doing. Here, the vendor needs to work with purchase orders that he had received from the customer. And in this case, he have received 4 purchase orders. We have some tiles over here, purchase orders for review. We have awaiting customer action. This is when he's responding on his purchase orders and he's waiting for the customer to either react on his suggested changes or so on. And the open confirm purchase orders is basically, this is the agreements that you have agreed with your customer. We have the vendor's identification in the top. This means he potentially can represent 2 vendor accounts, this person that's logged in, and then he can swap between those accounts. by just picking another vendor account here in that dropdown. But right now we are a Fabricam supplier that has logged in. I can see that one of my purchase orders as here we see today, I have 4, I need to process them all, but for this demonstration, I'll process this one we see today. Okay, I'll take a look at this purchase order. I have one line. It has to be very simple here. And I have my response is still I haven't answered it. There is amount, some price information, terms of payments, method of payment, the overall delivery date, and the delivery address. There is the line down here, and this product I have ordered. Obviously, there is the customer have identification, my identification, seeing the vendor's ID of the item. So that will appear in this external information down here. And also if there would have been a specific delivery address, that would also have appeared here. So I have information about the delivery date, the quantity, unit price, and so on and so forth. So now I can choose to accept it completely. I have options to accept, reject, or suggest changes. The suggest changes scenario we'll look at in a moment. So I will go ahead and accept this order. I can put in a note that will go back to the purchasing agent. And on this accept page, there is a possibility to configure a text from the customer side of what is it that you want to communicate to the vendor when he accepts the order. That could be terms and condition, a link to some terms and condition, or just some notification of the delivery agreement or yeah. So here I go ahead and accept it. And now this will be available back in the purchasing agent page. So working here. So this is where I'm logged in with the purchasing agent. I have all my purchase orders here. And if you can remember, the purchase order number of this was 100. I can see I can close this from my vendor page here and refresh it. You can see that the purchase order has disappeared from the list. So the thing is that the vendor has now been configured with that if he accepts the purchase order, then that purchase order will directly be confirmed. It's a setup on the vendor that you can choose whether the purchase order will kind of stop in a status where it's not kind of auto-confirmed, or if it's just be auto-confirmed if the vendor confirms. The reason why we have these two settings is, at least the one where it's auto-confirmed, is that this will reduce the purchasing agent's time to interact with that purchase order. It will just flow through and end in a confirmed state. So let's find this the vendor account. I can filter on my vendor that I use for vendor collaboration here. With this one. So let's look at that one, what happened here. So when I send it out, I had a requested delivery date as actually today, the 24th, and what the confirmed delivery date will be updated and the state will change to confirmed. So that is the result of vendor just in a very plain vanilla scenario, just accepting the order. So that was what I wanted to say about that scenario. On the vendor side, the open confirmed purchase orders down here will now have that order that I have just confirmed from the vendor side. And the vendor will be able to track this order and see when it is invoiced and when it's received by purchase order status. That will change when the process continues. So now I want to continue with a little bit more advanced scenario. Let me go back and I find the purchase order I prepared for that. So now you can see the flow, how it's handled from the purchasing agent side here. So I have prepared a purchase order with 3 lines. I have with 4 lines, 3 lines with an item, and the 4th line with a procurement category, which is not a registered item, but it's a category, and then you enter the text of the product. So I want to make this order a little bit more advanced. I actually want to add an attachment, because one of the capabilities here is that the vendor and the customer can exchange documents, attachment files, and so on. So let me attach a document. I have file, images, notes, URL, different types of documents I can attach. So I will take a look at here I have some prepared document of some delivery instruction, but this can be pictures of the items or whatever you want to share with the vendor here. So one important thing is that I will make the restriction external, because I want to choose what it is that I really want to share with my vendors. So once I've made it external, I'm good to go with that document has been attached. So another thing I want to do, I want to add some charges on it as well. I want to put a fee on the freight, a fixed charge of 200. So now I decorated this PO a little bit more rich than the previous PO I had. So it has charges, it has attachments, it has more lines than I said previously. It doesn't have a confirmed date, of course. So, and it's in an approved state. So let me just say, we also have POs that is handled by workflow, so there's change management in them. So if I had workflow applied on the purchase order, then I would go through this process and have an internal approval first, and it also arrived in an approved state. So the external vendor, the vendor is not part of that standard change management workflow. So here I'm in approved state, and then take a look at what happens here. So now I have this area of actions, vendor collaboration, where I have send for confirmation is active because I have enabled this vendor for vendor collaboration. So I'm sending this for confirmation. And this page is available for you. Here you can configure print management, so you actually also sending a email with the PO attached to the vendor if you want to notify him about that the PO has arrived. And then he would know that he should go into this web interface and find the PO. But it just can be used as a heads up that the PO is coming. You could also kind of bulk send PO by adding multiple POs here in this page, and then send more than one at a time to different vendors, for example. So I will process this and take a notice of the status up here, because now it's going from approved to an external review, and all the time it's out on the vendor side, it will be in external review state. So if I go to my workspace, purchase order preparation, I have a list where I can see which ones is in external review awaiting vendor response. So I can have an overview of what has been sent to the vendor that I'm waiting response for. So this one was the one that we just sent and awaiting for the vendor to answer. Let's go on the vendor interface page here. Go to the workspace, where I can see that in my purchase orders for review, I have received this new purchase order. I'll take a look at it. And immediately I can see that it has notes and attachments. I'll take a look at what has been shared with me. I have some delivery instructions here. I can open that document. So here I have delivery instructions, and of course, as I said before, this can be any kind of document that can be shared with the vendor. Okay. It could also have been an attachment on one of the lines, and if I had attachment on the lines, I would be able to see a little check mark out here on the line to indicate that there is an attachment on the line. Here I only have it on the header, but it have a clearly indication that it has notes and attachment. I can check the charges here, which will show me that there is a freight fixed charge value. So, and again, one of the items, they are sharing the external item number, which is the number I can recognize in my company as a vendor. So here again, I have different possibilities. I have accept, reject, suggest, changes. And by the way, if I'm using this print preview, I can generate a PDF document of the purchase orders that I can save for my files. But now I want to continue the scenario by going in and suggesting some changes here. Yeah, and now the response status has changed to edited, because the vendor is in the process of making some suggestions, and that status can actually be seen on the purchasing agent side, that has kind of a indication that, well, the vendor has started working on this, or at least has seen this PO. So here it's a place where I can put in as a vendor my own document reference. That could be to the sales order that I am handling on my side, if I have that. And I can also, I have a confirmed delivery date. So if I choose a delivery date here, I will be able to bulk update the delivery dates on the lines down here. I will not do it right now because I have a plan for these lines. So mode of delivery, I can also go in and change that to another mode. Like that. So let's go down to the lines because I have various options of responding on the lines. So let me just give a little bit more space here so I can see the. So by default, when they open this page, then the line status is accepted because there's been no changes, and if you don't change anything, we assume that it will be returned in accepted state. But that's not the case for our person here. So the first line, I will go in and say, well, this delivery date I cannot honor. I have to push it out and deliver the 30th. And the quantity, you can choose to say, well, we only have 7 we can deliver. So this is my change to the first line. So as soon as that is saved, then the line status will change. So you can clearly see that this has accepted, but there is some changes on that. For this HDMI cable, I would like to substitute this. So I don't have any more on stock, but I have an alternative item of that. So this is also a possibility. By substituting, a new line will be created. And this delivering column over here, you can see there is check mark for indicating the line that is expected to have a delivery, whereas this that is substituted, I'm not planning to deliver that, but I'm planning to deliver an alternative item here. So I'll go in and write there is a new HDMI cable. And I'll deliver it the same date, or I could change the date out also. I could also change the quantity here, but let's keep it here. So now I want to, the next line, well, if I wanted to, for example, tell about this item, I could add note from the vendor side. I could upload a note or attachment. Let me just put in a note here. If it was an attachment, you could attach the item description or specifications of this new suggested item. Item we just got this. So, and this of course will flow back to the purchasing agent that's giving and receiving. So here you can see that has note and attachment. So now there's a note attached to this line. So this next one, I would like to split the delivery here. So I'm doing it like this. I'm splitting it in 2 deliveries, where one is could be for the same day as requested, and the other will come a couple of days later. So, and here again, the split into schedule line, the deliver is not marked here, but the schedule lines are marked as being delivered. The last one, with the procurement category office disk accessories, which normally would have a description of what is required down here. I want to reject that. So it's turned to rejected. And here, of course, I could also add a note of why I'm rejecting this line. So a lot of information push back to the purchasing agent. And here you can see, for example, the changed values I had here is now bolded. And I can see the original value that was requested here and the original quantity that's requested. So this is when I go in and change some of the data that came from the customer. Yeah. So now I am accepting the order with changes. And again, here I also read a text which is really configured from the customer side that can see that can where you can define a text for this scenario where the vendor goes in and suggests some change. There could be other conditions. There could also be please accept some processing time because we need to process your suggested changes and you will receive a response or whatever that process is from the customer side now. So it's accepted with changes here. And when I go back to my workspace, I can see that in my awaiting for customer action on me right now. Awaiting for customer actions is my order here, which I have accepted with changes, and all my changes are visible. So on the purchasing side, you can see that in external review awaiting for vendor response, now my PO disappeared, and in external review requires action. It will appear here, hopefully soon. Not being kind to me right now. I go in and find my vendor. So here is my purchase order. Let's see if I receive the response. So this is also another way to get into to the response. So directly from the purchase order in the collection of actions under vendor collaboration here, you can see whatever you have sent to the vendor, and you can see what you have received. You can also have let me just show you this. You have a confirmation history. So if you have had a lot of churns around a PO, you will see that history here in this list. When was it sent? And you can always track back to that version that was sent. The same thing that you can do on the vendor side as well. I can show you that in a moment. But here you can see what have happened with this PO. So I have received the response. Here, and I can see that there's a lot of different types of changes. So the most common change we have seen being used is the change of dates and quantity. So the substitute and split into schedule is more rare, and it requires more handling on the customer side because if you want to substitute an item, you'll need to create that item in your item catalog. So it requires some manual handling. So, but in most cases, you will be able to consume these changes here and update the PO directly. But since there is so many different types of changes, because of the scenario I wanted to show you, I can automatically process this first line here. So I have an action say process PO update, and this means that all the updates that the vendor came with will be updated directly on the purchase order, except for the ones that needs manual update on the purchase order. So let me just process the order. And then I get a message here, I'm about to update the purchase order with the changes from the response that have not been processed. By doing so, you'll revert the purchase order from status approved to an approval status. Trade agreements will not be reevaluated. And this means that the purchase order is in external review right now, and once you start changing it, you will basically make a new revision of the purchase order, and we need to track that. That's why we change it into a new state. But you can always go back to the previous revision of the purchase order that you actually sent to the vendor. But since we now are manipulating, updating a PO, we will need to create a new revision, hence having a new state on the order. This is what this is communicating. I will update it, and if you notice the areas where there were changes, both this document reference or anything on the header will be transferred to the PO, and this line where I changed the delivery date has been updated to the PO. Just to make a check here, I can peek into the PO here, and you can see the first line, the quantity now is 7. And the delivery date is 30. So that has been updated, but the other lines have not been updated. So that needs manual handling, and this is what I'm indicating here. So just for sake of having some communication back from the system of what it updated, you say the header is processed and line 1 is processed. But you can also track that update right here. So now you remember I added a note as a vendor here. From the purchasing side, they can go in and see that note. So we just got this replacement. This was the one that was substituted. So in that way, you can exchange the documents attached to the PO coming from the vendor. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much the whole PO exchange. I could continue here and update the PO and substitute, and of course make delivery schedule and send it out again to the vendor, which will be the normal case that will happen. And in that case, the vendor will just make and accept the order. And that will end up as the first scenario I was showing will end up in a confirmed state, and then the vendor will be able to see that confirmed PO and take that as the agreement and act upon it. So let me go back to what else you can do in that vendor collaboration interface. We have an invoicing. It's not that I will go very detailed in this invoicing workspace, but just to give you a little peek into what's happening in that, you can create a new invoice based on a purchase order. So you can say there is one that you can see that the customer have received. Give it your invoice number. create that invoice. So of course it's a draft invoice that you are creating, and then you can submit that invoice to an internal workflow on the customer side that then will approve the invoice. So it requires that a workflow is set up. So as soon as the workflow is set up, you'll get a workflow action up here, and in that way the vendor can, I mean, they can go in and change the quantity as what they have shipped. And yeah, so basically this is will be a draft invoice, and then you can see which one has approved, not paid, and which one has been paid. So in that way, it's easy to track the status of the invoices. Other things that you can do here is to go in and from this Fabricam supplier, you can see the contact persons that is registered under your vendor account. So in this case, Erin Hagen is actually the user I'm logged in with, Erin H here. And I'm using this user email to log in with. So I want to explain you a little bit about what it's, how the whole security is put together. So we kind of changing gears a little bit right now from the purchase order process, collaboration process, and then into how are the whole security around a user logging in and can only see the purchase orders and the contact persons and the invoices and so on related to their account. So take a notice of Erin and Carl here, because let me go back to my presentation. I want to take this picture and explain a little bit about how the whole security is configured. So if you have on your, let's go from the person party, which can be Peter or Aaron or whoever is logged in. So this is a concept in the Dynamics where you have a party representing a person. And that person is associated with a user account here, which is peter@consoler.com. And that user has specific security roles. That user also needs to be registered as an Azure Active Directory, an AAD account, in order to be authenticated to log in to our Dynamics 365. So this is the whole authentication. And the person party, you can see there is small connections up to the vendor accounts. There's 2 vendor accounts, small icons of factories here. So the relation between that person and the vendor account is actually what's used in our security policy. So that's what's determining which POs it's filtering out. And here I have illustrated that you can be connected to 2 or more vendor accounts, and then you will be able to see more vendors' documents. So I showed you earlier how in the workspace you could select up in the upper left corner, you could select another vendor account there. So in that way you can, within your scope of authority, you can select which vendors you are looking at. Okay, so let me go back. Let me illustrate this in the build. If I go to my vendors, I will show you how it looks in product. I'm using Fabricam here, and let me just show you the vendor, because one little detail I also want to mention when I'm so it has here. Get the right vendor. Oops. The vendor collaboration field here this is where I choose whether it's active, whether at all I can communicate with this vendor via this interface, and if it's active, how is the PO going to be handled? Is it auto confirm as I showed you in the beginning? It just confirm if the vendor accepts, or is it not auto confirm, meaning that it will stay in external review even if the vendor accepts, meaning that somebody needs to go in and move it into a confirmed state. So this was just one little detail around the configuration. There's another configuration on the vendor here where you can choose whether you want to show the prices on the PO as well. So let me show you the contacts here. So I have Carl and Aaron, and for the Aaron Hagen's contact, let me just open the users list. Use my nice search capability. So this is my user here. As you can see, I'm associated with my person, Erin Higgins, which is connected to the party over here, party record of Erin Higgins, which is also used as a contact person. This is what made the link to that vendor. And I have specific security roles. I have this system external user. It's mandatory for all users of Dynamics 365 to have a system user or system external user. So the system user is normally what you use for your internal users, where the system external user is what is used for people or users that classified as external users. They have much more limited access to some of the generic capabilities like advanced queries and so on, which we have disabled for this user. And on top, additional to the system external user, we have vendor external, we have vendor admin external. And the vendor admin external is the role that gives you additional capabilities of having access to contact persons and to having access to provision new users or raise requests for new users. And that is actually leading me to the next thing I want to show you, is that how are you creating a new vendor user? Because we have a workflow that is set up to handle that. So this can be activated from the vendor side, either going in here and then they having this provision new vendor user. So they can create a new user, which is a new contact. They can create a new contact person, and then they can ask for provision this vendor user. And the same thing can be done from the purchasing agent side. Let's see Carl here. He's not a user yet. You can say he has no vendor collaboration, and he doesn't have a user account. So I will provision him as a vendor user. That means that I'm requesting that he is created as a user. So this opens a form here where I first of all needs to put his email alias in, and there is some restriction of which emails can be used. For the moment, we cannot use consumer accounts like Hotmail, Gmail, Live, and so on. This is something that we're working on changing. And so here we will typically put in Carl at Fabricam. Right? .com. So this this is an email that is owned by his company, and even if he's not an AAD account or that company doesn't have a tenant in Azure, we can make him a user anyway, because on the background when you're uploading this user to Azure portal, then it will see this as a non-user and create a viable tenant for this user account. So you have a business contact specification, and here you could potentially have multiple legal entities that the user is, or the contact person is representing. It could be that he's contact person for multiple vendor accounts, but there is only a few vendor accounts that you would give him access to collaborate via the interface. You need to, here he's only one. And you can also choose which role it is that you want to give him. Is it an admin role or something, so maintain vendor contact person and vendor user request, or is it just that he should respond to POs and invoices and so on? In this case, I'll just give him one of the roles, and I'll submit this request. Okay, so now it's in the process. At the meantime, I can show you just a little PowerPoint of what's really happening here. So the thing is that I raised a request, and the system is processing it. I'll show you a workflow in a moment, how it's put together. And it's involving different persons. You can put different approval steps in. It will go to the admin, and in the current build, the admin will create a user on the Azure portal. And next step will be that the Azure portal, the whole B2B process of in Azure portal will contact the new vendor contact person, and the password and registering will happen between Azure portal and the new contact person, and then he will be redirected to log in to our vendor collaboration interface. So let's go back and see what have happened here. Let's see if I have a it might be that my workflow is running slow. Let me do that. Really, disconnect that external. Here it is. I'll just make sure it's running. In the meantime, I'll show you how the workflow is put together. So the workflow is here. When I am requesting a new user, I put in an approval step that I need to approve the further processing. I put in a task where we are sending Azure and using the uploading the new user to Azure portal using the B2B process. And then I will approve it again internal in Dynamics, and then it will automatically create a user in Dynamics 365. At the same time, the Azure portal is of course working and communicating with that user, as I showed in the PowerPoint. And then I can notify the user if I want to communicate with a mail, and then it's ending. So, but this workflow is freely configurable. So this is just how I put up my demo. So let's see if I have. Things it's here. Okay, that is not. There must be something with my badge at the right moment. Apologize for that. Make sure I understand it. I can send a new, let's see if that changes something. This is the way I will the way I would have created new contact. Provision of the user. Okay. And by the way, the available roles that comes up here is configured in external roles. So you you can freely define which roles that you want to allow the user to have or choose between here. So it seems like there is something.
Is it based everything?
Yeah, it looks like it, but it might be not so responsive, or maybe there's delay on it. Okay, but anyway, I mean, there is a. Let me just give it a last chance here. But we're also reaching an end. Work items assigned to me. sometimes it takes some time to get the request of, but anyhow, I think the workflow here illustrates very well what's going on. That you have an approval step, you'll have this sent, you will extract an Excel and upload to Azure portal. And this is also things that we are in the process of improving. So you will not need to upload that Excel to the portal, but it will be automatically using an API to Azure, meaning that it will run more automatic. And then an approval step again, and the whole provisioning or the whole creating the user in Dynamics 365, where the user will be decorated with the security roles that we have specified. Yeah, I think I will end here. Time is up. Sorry for the workflow engine not being nice to me, but I said sometimes it will take some time to make it run. I think we'll end the presentation here. Thank you for attending.
All right, thank you, Mai. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment to bring your attention to a link that I posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference. We ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And with that, that's going to conclude today's Learning Media web conference. Attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Mai, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.